do a hair flip, looking straight down at the new girl in town, fresh from the heights, and I make it feel nice. Just 'cause of me, I can do anything.
Well, welcome guys to the first ShyftU podcast. I am super excited because I've been thinking about this, planning this, having reservations about this, getting encouraged to do this, just trying to create a safe space for people to talk about change and embracing vulnerability, because that's the space I am in my life right now. So just a little bit, I'm Lasagna Lopez. I'm your host.
I am Latina Venice. I'm the co-host.
And the funny thing about it is we made a full circle moment. We actually went to the same high school in Buffalo, New York. Yeah. And during the entire COVID situation, a lot of things came up, a lot of feelings, emotions, vulnerability issues. And so when she finished her health coach certification, she put something out there like, hey, I can't remember if it's 20 people or whatever. If you're interested, reach out to me. And I did. And so that's the beginning of rekindling a friendship that's growing into a sisterhood. Mm-hmm. But just in general about ShyftU, the name ShyftU actually came up to me maybe about 2 or 3 years ago, at the time when I was really heavy into exercising, and I was doing like hip hop boot camp. I was boxing. I was doing all types of things. And I was like, hey, it would be pretty cool, to have an app where you could go to different gyms without committing to a membership, almost like the Uber for gyms. And nobody better take my idea because it's on tape. But anyhow, so that kind of
steal it. They're gonna steal it.
They are gonna steal it.
Somebody's gonna take it.
Somebody gonna take it, but that's okay. I'll still be better because you got
give her a cut.
Yeah, Kmart, Walmart, Target. So it's room for competition. But anyhow, over time, transitioning through different things, I realized that ShyftU was actually a movement and could embrace a brand, and you almost can apply that to anything. Mm-hmm. And so this year, I made a commitment to walk into a space of vulnerability, and I thought it was perfect to introduce that through this podcast. So this is a very uncomfortable space for me. Today, we are highlighting mental health because during the process of me discovering vulnerabilities, the audiobooks I read, wanting to embrace change, and we'll talk later about the change that I'm talking about right at this moment, then I came across Josephina Bates. Beautiful Josephina Bates. I'm going to look at her. I don't want to mess up any of your credentials. But Josephina, she is the founder and owner of Olin Counseling Services. She's bilingual. She's licensed clinical social worker that's fluent in English and Spanish. She earned her master's in social work from Clark Atlanta University and has over 20 years of experience. That is awesome.
Amazing.
Thank you.
And just working with her personally, I can tell you she is so loving. That vulnerability piece, she brought that volume down for me, and I was able to start working on some of the issues that I have. So I know some people may want to say, okay, you got a life coach,
yes,
and you have a mental health counselor.
Yes.
And how do they overlap? How are they different? If we got whoever wants to start first.
Yeah, so that was one of the questions I wanted to ask Josephina, so she can let our audience know the difference. And I'll talk from a life coach perspective, because when people hire a life coach, a lot of times they come in with the wrong conception of what that is. And so I tell people all the time, I don't help you solve your problems. Like, I help you navigate through them. Kobe Bryant was one of the greats, but he had a coach, somebody that can show you how to get to that mark where you can make that 3-point shot. So You're
Okay.
a therapist. Josephina, take it away. Let us know what the difference is.
Thank you so much for this lovely, lovely introduction. I'm so excited to be with you ladies. I know that this has been, we've spoken about this for quite some time, and I am so proud of both of you. And this is going to be amazing.
Well, thank you for being our first guest.
Oh,
That's
thank
right.
you. Thank you. I feel so honored. So I like to say that a therapist, we together with the client, we come up with the tools, right? So I don't believe in a cookie cutter approach, one size fits all, because everyone is uniquely different, right? So we come up with the tools, and I feel that the life coach assists with applying it.
Yeah.
Right?
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah. So as you're speaking, I'm like, how can I make it where I can condense it? And it really, really, I don't want to say makes sense, but then people be like, oh, okay, I got it.
Yeah.
Right. So we'll work on the skills and creating them. And then the life coach, Tina, will help you navigate and apply them when necessary,
So
right?
giving you the
And hold you
motivation.
accountable
Right,
too.
right.
You know, we will both hold you accountable, but Tina will be that person holding your hand, right? And encouraging you, where I am more direct. I don't want to say confrontational. I like to say I gently, right, confront what are the barriers, what are the obstacles, because what we may come up with may not necessarily work, and that's okay. So we have to get it to fit you. Right. So that's my job, is to figure out what are those roadblocks that are happening that you can't seem to push through. And we figure that out together. And Tina is the person that will help you through.
Amen.
All right.
I am
So
a
it's
witness.
a beautiful, I find it to be such a beautiful combination. And what's so interesting is that there is, for some clinicians, therapists, and life coaches, there's this point of contention because there's no real understanding of what each profession does.
Right.
So I'm glad that you and I can be in this space and we can agree upon it and we can respect each other in what we do.
Yeah.
And I can speak from a patient client perspective, because this is all new to me. Both of you guys just stumbled up into my life, and it's just working out the way it's supposed to. Like my husband always said, whatever is supposed to happen will happen. And it came at a very critical time, in my life. I didn't mention the fact that I'm a surgeon, and the reason why I didn't.
Hey,
I have a license to cut people.
Yes, that is Dr. Lopez.
Yes, but the reason why I didn't mention it is because being a doctor is what I do. It's not who I am. I am a wife. I am a mother. I'm many things, but that's just what I do. And I've always been that way. And I feel like, especially, I keep mentioning COVID because it was such a drastic change in everybody's lives, right?
Yes.
And I feel like my anxiety and my vulnerability, it was heightened. And it was to the point, and I think one day we spoke, it was to the point where it's like, I don't have an answer, like, period. You know what I mean? Like, as a doctor, we find solutions. I'm innately like that. I was trained to be like that. And even when things look bleak or like there are no alternatives, we figure it out. We just do. We figure it out and we navigate through that. But I was at that moment, I told you, it was just like a cycle. Like, okay, if I turn this way, there's a block there. Okay, if I turn this way, there's a block there. So it helped me a lot because I was I was afraid.
Right.
And me saying that I was afraid means that I've grown, because I typically would not have said that, because we have to put on this armor of strength for multiple reasons, not trying to make this to necessarily be a racial or gender thing, but the truth is the truth, right? If you're in a predominantly male dominated field, being a surgeon, you're looked at a certain way. If you want to express yourself for me, I was taught look in the eyes, you know, stand behind,
Firm handshake.
Yeah, like, you know, basically you have to advocate for yourself.
Right.
So if you show any sign of vulnerability, I personally, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people translate that into weakness, but being vulnerable is a strength. And I'm learning that. Yeah. So, yeah. And so when we first talked, we talked about, she took me through all these exercises, y'all, but I was serious about it. Was I not?
No, she did it.
I
She
did
every homework assignment.
I did every homework assignment. I didn't care how late I worked. I did it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have my session because I wanted to get a solution, you know? And then when I actually met Josephina, it was for a totally different reason. You know, part of the space that I'm in too is I have a preteen. Actually, she'll be 13 next month. And I know as sweet as, well, as good as my parents were, I don't feel like I really learned good communication skills outside of my workplace. So I wanted to set myself up to be able to communicate with her so I can continue to have a strong bond. Everyone says, oh, when they're a teenager, they'll lock themselves up in the room. They don't want to talk to you. I don't want that. Now, is she going to do that sometimes? Probably still, but I still wanted to give myself the tools. And so that's how we met Josephina, just to have that session for communication. And in it, I felt comfortable enough to, you know, to tackle the vulnerability piece. So I just want you to explain to everyone that's listening to us the difference between being diagnosed with depression and anxiety versus having depressed moments or having anxious moments. Because I think some people, they don't know how to separate the two.
Right.
And so either for both groups, they won't seek any help whatsoever. So do you want to
Absolutely. So I always say that everyone experiences depressive symptoms and anxious symptoms, right? Just living life, when we are rushing to work, when there is a moment where somebody got hurt that you love, you may feel sad, and that is okay. The reason why it's important to define what symptoms are, depressive, anxious symptoms versus a disorder, is because what it can do is minimize and invalidate what someone who truly has a disorder is experiencing. And the reverse, that person who has the disorder may look at it and minimize what they actually have and say, no, I'm just having like these symptoms, but I'm not really depressed. I really don't have an anxiety disorder, right?
And speaking from, not to interject, speaking from a person who has not been diagnosed with a disorder but had depressed and anxious moments, the flip side of that is those of us who are like that will not seek help. When you actually would be better off getting assistance with navigating through that, instead of wasting time trying to figure it out on yourself. And there are people there to serve as a resource.
Absolutely. So. And you don't necessarily have to have a disorder to seek help and see a therapist.
How do you?
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to. People think that, well, I'm experiencing anxiety and I'm experiencing some depressive symptoms, but I'm good. I'll figure it out. But here's the thing. It's a slippery slope, right? Because if you let it go on for too long, it can become a disorder, because the chemicals such as the dopamines, the serotonin, the endorphins, all those feel good chemicals, when you're in a depressive state for a period of time, it like depletes. It's like your body can't produce what it needs to feel good, right? So it's a slippery slope. And I say that we all have frailties. We all have moments. I've never met one person that wasn't struggling with some type of mental health frailty. It doesn't mean that they had a disorder or a specific diagnosis even, but it just means that they needed some assistance. They needed a safe space to divulge everything that they're feeling, that they're experiencing, right? And sometimes they just need you to listen. And sometimes they need that guidance and that feedback. So I just want to be clear to everyone that you don't have to have a diagnosis or diagnoses, several diagnoses, or disorder to seek therapy, right? Or to seek a life coach.
So let me ask you this.
Sure.
What are some of the signs of when you should seek help? Because for me, being diagnosed as being depressive and being on medicine for it since I was 15 years old and being suicidal, I felt like by the time I reached suicidal, it was kind of too late.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? And so I know we don't want anybody to hit that point before they seek help. So what would be the sign of this is not just something I'm going through in the moment, that this is a real thing, because these moments are happening more often?
Right. Well, exactly what you said. If it's one of those things that you can't shake off, right? Because we have moments where we're like, you know what? I need to sleep it off. Tomorrow's going to be a better day, but maybe tomorrow never comes, right? Maybe it's becoming more consistent and persistent. So those negative thoughts are coming in more and more. Those anxious thoughts of trying to control the future and figure out what you need to do to prevent a catastrophe. I always say depression has you living in the past, anxiety has you living in the future.
But question to you though, if that continues to happen to a person, doesn't it become their norm and it becomes
does.
difficult to differentiate if it's really a problem?
Right.
So what things would you recommend that people in their support system, if they have one, recognize to say, hey, I think it would behoove you to at least talk to somebody?
Well, you just touched on two things, right? The support system. Some people don't have a support system. They've always had to try to figure things out themselves. I am a product of that. At a very young age, I was out on my own. I'm from the Bronx, New York. That's not the easiest place to grow up. And so I just always figured things out. So I didn't have time to be sad or to talk because I couldn't be in a space of vulnerability because then I couldn't get my action plan together. So number one is creating that support system, right? And when you create that support system and they really get to know you, they'll be able to observe when there's a shift, right? Or when there's something that's quite different. People that know me, for example, they know when something is not quite right. I'm acting a little bit different and they'll gently approach me and vice versa, right? The other thing, the other question was, when should you go? Here's the thing. As we become more progressive, when we speak about mental health, mental illness, and seeking therapy, we're starting to see a difference, right? Where people are more accepting of it. People are reaching out more. And it's because of these platforms like this.
Right.
So people are going to feel and continue to feel comfortable with seeking help, right? When we continue to normalize it, when we continue to say, hey, I receive therapy. You've met me. I live a productive life. It's okay. Right.
I would even propose that we even start shifting the focus on mental maintenance.
Absolutely.
Just like health maintenance.
Absolutely.
Right? You exercise, you eat right, we monitor
self-care.
Just self-care.
Yes.
To give you the tools so that when you do reach certain situations, you'll know how to maneuver. I'm telling you guys, this is a new like I was so anxious just even doing this because everyone knows that I'm a strong person, and I am.
Right.
And so when I got to the point where I felt like I'm tired of being strong.
Yep.
I'm tired of being strong.
Right.
Like, you're strong for other people. You mentor other people. I was like, who's mentoring me?
Right.
Who's being strong for me?
Right.
And you carry so much for so long. And it's not that necessarily people are forcing you to do it. It's just your nature. You automatically do it because it's worked for you. It's worked for whoever has benefited from it, whether it's patients or whatever.
And that's what you know.
And that's what I know.
So it may not even necessarily be that it's worked for you. That's just what you know.
That's true. It became my normal.
Right? Exactly.
It became my normal.
Yeah.
It's like a person with depression or anxiety. You learn to live that way. So every single day, these thoughts, these feelings, you just learn how to push through. right?
Right.
And you still work and you still handle all, and no one really knows what you're battling and what you're struggling, right?
Right.
And it's not until you get that help that you realize, man, I've been carrying these strong emotions. I had no idea. I feel like I feel lighter.
Yep.
I'm sleeping better. I can be in the moment. I'm present, right?
Yeah.
Because when you're struggling with some of these mental health frailties, it's very hard to be in the moment.
Yeah.
You can be sitting down watching a show with your child and you're there, but you're not there, right?
I
And
am a
you don't-
witness to that.
Absolutely. I think we've
to
all
that.
experienced
I am.
that.
Yeah.
So, it's very important to understand that we go through these moments where we may have difficulties and these frailties, but sometimes we don't realize how much we're carrying. And I hate to use the word normal because normal is relative. It depends on what your standard
Right.
of normal is. But when you've always been a certain way, you don't know how else to be. And it's not
Right.
until you do the work that you realize, wait a second, a lot of what I have are trauma responses.
Right.
Right?
Absolutely.
Realize that.
Absolutely.
Right.
And one thing I wanted to point out is that all three of us, we're in a profession where we're in service. And so, Josephina, you and I discussed it. Like a lot of times when you give of yourself all the time, it's like, how do you hit the reset button
Absolutely.
and replenish yourself,
Right.
so that you can continue to serve the way you're supposed to serve. But I do have a question because social media, we're talking about norms. Everybody is talking about mental health now. All on social media, that's all you talking about.
Right.
All the artists out there, they're talking about their mental health and everything. And so for me, they're kind of normalizing something that really shouldn't be normal. It shouldn't be normal to be depressed all the time. It shouldn't be normal to have anxiety all the time.
Do you think they're trying to say that, or are they trying to bring awareness?
I think a little of both. Actually, if I'm being honest, I think anytime somebody acts a little cray to according to like how they're thinking, we can say,
they're bipolar. They
they're
just start
bipolar.
going,
Like people talk about Kanye all the time.
Right.
We won't, but
Listen, my thing with Kanye is I honestly think he is a genius. I mean,
I think he's a genius.
yeah, I
too.
think he knows so much information that he can't keep it
You
in his
look
head.
at the Kanyes and the Michael Jacksons and the
Yes.
Walt Disneys. Like those are not normal thinkers.
Right.
They think outside
Outside
the
the
box and
box.
they think differently. But he has come out about his mental health, so everybody knows he has an issue. So now I feel like everything he do, it's like, oh,
They're gonna
we
label
know
him
he
like
has
that.
mental health issues.
That's true.
Right.
Somebody can be exhausted and suffer from exhaustion. Oh, mental health. Everything now is summed up to mental health, and so it's like,
Right.
so as it relates to social media and them kind of normalizing that everybody has these they have mental health
moments.
days, right? You could take mental health days at work. And so how can we make sure that social media knows that, yes,
Being
thank
responsible.
you for being aware that mental health is a thing, but also how can we help these people? How can we help
Right.
ourselves? How can we not fall into that?
Absolutely. One thing I will say that you mentioned, it's not normal to have depression. It's not normal to have anxiety, but the reality is that a huge percentage of us struggle with that.
Yeah.
And everyone in their lifetime will experience a period of depression or anxiety because that's part of the human experience,
Yeah.
right? So I would like to say that they're normalizing that we struggle with these things, that these things are real, that it's
Right.
not made up, it's not in your head, that we struggle with this. But at the same time, there's a responsibility with placing it in those platforms. I'm not a huge fan of social media because of what it's doing to our youth and even adults.
Yeah,
Right? And talk about the
That's another
BBLs.
segment.
That's another segment. No, so I'm not, because I feel that why it's a double-edged sword, right? Because social media is a great platform to bring awareness, but at the same time, it's also the cause of a lot
It
of
is.
mental illness, such as I've seen an increase on dissociative disorder. Because how many times do you see kids or even yourself that you're just doing this? You're swiping up, you're swiping up, you're
Can
swiping
you
up.
give
an hour.
definition of dissociative
Sure.
disorder?
So dissociative disorder is basically you disconnect from the world, right? Maybe you're stressed out, and it's okay to disconnect. We can consider that self-care. But when it becomes a habit, when it becomes persistent, right? And you struggle from stopping yourself, that's when it becomes a disorder, right?
Okay.
When you spend hours just swiping up and you're not taking care of your responsibilities because you know what? It's almost a way of avoidance. So I don't want to necessarily say that it's just disconnecting, because it's okay to disconnect. We need to disconnect for our own mental health. It becomes a problem when that is a way to avoid what you need to do and is causing chaos in other parts of your life.
Right.
Right. So it's a double-edged sword, because a lot of people disassociate by using social media, even binge watching shows, right? It's a slippery slope. While it is okay if you do it way too often, you're doing it from the minute you get up, you got to be careful with that. And I've seen an increase in that disorder because of it. And so you live in this world of make believe, and it becomes
That's
your
why
reality.
it's important to have people connections, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that's something that we're not emphasizing.
Yes.
But you also have to be selective with the people that you're surrounded. Like I've posted on social media. I've talked about every single person from January up until now that I have accumulated as my village, because you guys have added some type of positivity in my life.
So have you.
You've given me thank you. You've given
Isn't
me
she
tools.
amazing?
Oh, you're so sweet. But, I think that people need to understand embracing that sisterhood, whatever circle you make sure it's the right circle. And my problem was that because of my lack of vulnerability, I was not allowing people to get close enough to me to even realize if I don't even want to use the word deserve, but if there is a connection enough to be in my village. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Because I was afraid of rejection, because I'm so loyal. I'm not patting myself on the back, but I'm loyal, and I'm either all in or all out.
Right.
So when I give and I'm all in, and if somebody does something that hurts me, then I'm all out. So that's the way that I've functioned basically my entire life, probably working from a state of trauma.
I call that, absolutely. It's all or nothing. The all or nothing approach, not good enough, all or nothing, right? You see that in a lot of people that struggle with anxiety.
Yeah.
Right? Either I'm going all in because that's that perfectionism, right? Which perfectionism is under the umbrella of anxiety. If I can't be all in, then I'm all the way to the left. I'm all out.
That's me. When I'm trying to get in the middle. I'm a work in
Right,
progress.
which is
That's
to
what the
me
shift-
good
that's what the
enough.
shift- Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And loyalty, we have to be careful with that word, because sometimes, and I don't want to insult you because I'm speaking for myself, it's also called people pleasing.
That part.
So what happens, and that's a trauma response.
It is.
Because if you're a young child, right?
Yes.
And you were never treated or made to feel valued, right?
Right.
Maybe your parents were working all the time. They just didn't have the time. You were a latchkey kid. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
Let's say that, you were compared to your friends, or you weren't made to feel special. What happens? You become this adult, you become this child. Hey, look at me. I'm going to go all out for you because I want you to see that I'm an amazing person, and I want you to see the value in me. And so I'm going to go above and beyond, even if it's, at the expense of my discomfort, my exhaustion. I'm going to go above and beyond because I want you to see how much of a good person I am. Does that
Okay,
make
I
sense?
just had an aha moment. You need to stop giving me therapy on the set.
Oh, sorry.
Stop it.
No,
I'm not paying you for this session, but that makes all the sense in the world. Just even hearing that, I can go back to my childhood and think of moments where I felt people that were supposed to unconditionally love me, and me say to my mom, like, why are they treating me like that? Why do they feel like that? You know, I haven't done anything. And so, yeah, and that honestly, to be honest with you guys, I was a straight A student all the way through. I made my only and first B, guys, in medical school and physiology because the teacher, he had communication problems. But
It was
was
not
so-
like
it was so devastating.
not Dr. Lopez
it was not my fault. I was so devastated. My mom was like, okay, if you never made a B, then maybe something could potentially be wrong with you. But just reflecting, hearing what you said, I know that was a driving force for me to be perfect or think that I'm perfect, because nobody's perfect, but to just drive it on in. I'm going to show them. And then now thinking, right, this is why you have these people in your life, in your circle, that then translated into relationships, right?
Right.
Whether they were, you know, boyfriends or friendships, the same thing. You will go all out to try to prove your value. And then I remember when I had the first scenario, I can't remember the exact situation, but I remember just talking about this, you know, in the context of what I was talking about. A light bulb just clicked on, and I was like, it's not me, it's them. Right, it's nothing wrong. And then honestly, it was like a sense of peace. There was no type of, it was no guilt for feeling that way at all. Actually, I more so pitied them than there was no anger anymore, because I felt, gosh, how, you know, you kind of missed out on a what do you say, quote unquote, Tina, a dope person, and developing a solid relationship with a dope person just because of whatever probably traumas they were functioning out of,
Absolutely.
right? So then I was like, okay, I can't be judgmental of them because they were working out of a space of trauma.
Because we all have
some type
childhood trauma.
And sometimes there's trauma bonding where you become friends because you have this bond, but that's the only thing that you have that's really relatable. And we do that. And we do that with friendships.
Right.
And we do that in relationships. So that's something that you have to also
Is that the same thing as codependency, or is that different?
It can be. And it's a little different, but codependency can come from trauma bonding, right? Because now I need for you to make me feel awesome, and vice versa. Right. Or it's not one and the same, but absolutely one can affect the other. But the trauma bonding, that's a very real thing. And that can turn very toxic.
Yes.
But one of the things that I want to circle back to when you mentioned about I'm this loyal friend, and when I see that you're not, I think to myself, well, you know what? It's your loss. But here's what I'm going to challenge you with. I'm going to play devil's advocate just a little bit.
Challenge.
Well, here's the thing. Sometimes, right, because we want to feel valued and because of who we are, we're such passionate people. That's why we're also good at what we do, because we love what we do. We tend to hold people to a standard they shouldn't be held up to.
Bingo.
Okay. So what does that mean? I'm this way. So in order for you to be a good friend to me, I need to see you reciprocate that. Right. But then it's kind of not fair to them, because maybe they're still a good friend. Right. But because they didn't do exactly what you do, you know what that message is? You don't value me as a friend. You don't see my value. So you know what? I don't need you in my life.
Yeah.
But they may not, unbeknownst to them, they're being held to this standard. They're thinking, and I have been a victim of that, and I have done that to people. Right.
And I think I even posted it when I was like introducing you guys. I said that, you know, when I talked about, you know, I'm at a state of authenticity and like listen, this is what it is. Like I'm not putting on a front for anybody. I don't care about the white coat, the stethoscope, the knife. I don't care about any of that, because you feel liberated. And how can you grow? How can you change? Because I'm ready to make a shift in all areas in my life. And so I did say that in one of my posts, where it was like, because I didn't want to be vulnerable, I didn't allow people into my space, because I had that expectation, because I was afraid to be vulnerable. I did have that expectation on people that, you know, what if you're a friend, I wouldn't say you accept anything somebody gives, because that's a balance, right? 'Cause
Yes.
you don't want to like give people a little leeway to say, well, they can just treat you anyway, and then you
Right.
deserve to devote time to that friendship. You don't want to put energy into that. But I will take ownership of that. You know, it was not, you know, a way that I thought I was thinking. I just know what my mom would say. I love hard.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when you love hard, you have to learn how to have discernment also.
Right.
And so I can love everybody in the room, but only those that are close to me that I value get a seat at my table. But I love everybody in the room, but only a certain few have a seat at my table.
Right.
And I recently did a post about friendships because I see people post all the time like, oh, I give this energy and when I help them and they didn't help me when I needed help. And my post was about, how did you know that's who was supposed to help you?
Right.
If you help them, you help them. That was your blessing and your gift to them.
Right.
Nobody said that they're supposed to be the ones to help you back.
Right.
You may get help from somebody else, the exact help that you need, but you're holding this person to this. And that does what? That calls for toxic energy and feelings and all kind of stuff because, you know, they let this control everything instead of changing their mindset and thinking like, okay, I need this help. Even though I help them, I know this person dealt with that, so let me talk to them. Like, just because I gave you $100 don't mean you supposed to give me $100 when I need it.
Right.
She might give me. I mean, you get what I'm saying.
Right.
So, I think when we're thinking about mental health and health in general, what's good for us, eliminating toxic energy so that we can keep ourselves sane, we just can hold ourselves accountable and like let people do what they do. Let them, you know, be them, but just be mindful that just because they're a friend, just because they're a family member, you can love on them, but it does not give them permission to sit at your table.
Fresh from the heights and I make it feel nice. Feeling so fly, I don't even know why. Feeling like a queen who can rap, who can sing. Just